Welcome to Get Moving TV. I'm Dr. Chris Landon. I serve as your host. We have a great show today. America, it's time for you to wake up. We've got a lot of girls out there and they're in power. So welcome to the show. Melinda is here today. Melinda, tell me about yourself and how you got to, besides being a girl in your spare time, what Girls in Power is all about and how you've been on a journey yourself.
Yes, I have. Thank you for having me. I'm the founder of Girls in Power, and after a long journey as a child who suffered with a lot of anxiety and grew up in a home devoid of love, lack of support, and my needs weren't met, I finally discovered myself in 2010. And after that journey of finding my skill sets and the value and self-worth that I had forgotten I had, led me to develop the Girls in Power curriculum, the program. And we serve girls 8 to 16 in a workshop setting. We work towards equipping girls to have the life skills around self-respect, self-value, and self-management. I'm equipping them to become mindful contributors of our society.
Well, when I talk to my patients, I talk to them about a toolbox. So, you know, yes. You need certain tools, and if you're going to build a fence, you need a hammer and nails and a saw. And so what kind of tools go into this toolbox?
That's great. Well, we actually do have what we call our Girls in Power tool bag. It comes with all the essentials in there. We design our workshops, first of all, in a safe, loving, and nurturing environment. We do that with women living within our community, whether they're business professionals or have some specific skill sets. We have them teach and lead our girls through our workshops, infusing their knowledge through our curriculum that I've developed. And we work on things around arts, health, purpose, and community. There's intention and purpose that we're trying to connect the girls with all the while for them to discover themselves, their true potential. And we do this in a fun atmosphere. And they work around arts, whether we bring an artist in who teaches them how to find paint or work with jewelry and string beads. We also work in health and wellness around restorative breathing, yoga, Zumba, so self-defense or exercise type classes. And we also talk about nutrition and self-care, so learning how to manage one's own body and care for themselves. We'll deal with body image issues in those workshops as well. We also work with purpose and intention, and in those specific classes, we talk about using I statements instead of making you statements, managing the self but with anxious thoughts. So we talk about limiting versus empowering beliefs, or irrational versus rational thinking.
You've been putting out a lot of ideas and a lot of kind of catchwords. So can you expand on some of them? This I and me stuff. How about that? Why don't we start there? So
yes.
What's an I statement? What's a me? What's that?
That's
all
a great
about?
question. Well, I statements are something that you can use, especially with in peer relations, with your parents or with your friends or with a coworker. And if you have a challenge or a conflict that you're experiencing and you are able to phrase it using an I statement, such as, let's say you had offended me and my feelings were hurt. I could say, Dr. Landon, I felt very sad and hurt when you said that the other day, you know, while we were at work together. That way I'm not putting you on the defensive, and the idea is that you're able to empathize with me and that you're able to feel my hurt and my sadness. Rather than me saying, Dr. Landon, you were a bully to me in the office, or you said something blah, blah, blah that was very critical. So therefore I'm trying not to put you in the defensive, therefore I want you to hear me.
Well, so when they get back, I mean, sometimes we go off on retreats and and then and you open up doors and let emotions out, and you want to make sure that we learn how to close those doors too, because you get back in that work environment. Not everybody is as nurturing and supportive. How do you go about helping in that work environment? How do they bring something back to help educate their coworkers and their bosses, so that, because you're really talking about communication.
Two-way. Absolutely, sorry about that. Yes, it's two-way communication, absolutely. Something that can be worked at towards on a daily basis in all relationships and in all conversations. And I think it really starts with a person being able to identify, first of all, what their triggers are and what their hot buttons are. And this is why we create margins as part of our program, why we teach about what it means to be still and in the moment, what the difference is between an irrational thought versus an irrational thought, because it does begin with us. And so a person has to become aware, has to accept their own faults, and also has to empathize with the other person. So there's many other tools that coincide in order for this to even actually work. So just using an I statement in and of itself is not enough. It really takes about me being able to put myself in your shoes, me modeling that constantly, the love and respect that I want. I have to model that to you. And over a period of time, it is possible for a person, even a child, to redefine their relationship with their parent, with their peer, with their brother, with their sister. Therefore, if they continue on that and they strive on that on a daily basis, then I think that is where the success comes. It's in the longevity of practicing it and relearning and reteaching ourselves.
Wait, can you go a little more into this rational, irrational?
Absolutely. Lived my life like that, growing up with that tape recorder in my head. A lot of negative thoughts that derived from an environment that wasn't cultivated with love, rather cultivated with harsh and abuse and neglect that made me feel worthless, made me feel less than a person, made me cope in a way to hide my feelings, even though I wanted to be heard. I was not confident or comfortable in sharing with the people closest to me. So I began living in my own world, in my own head. And when we I'm sure when we become only aware of our own brain and the thoughts that we're creating, and we live with that, it's extremely dysfunctional. So in order to become aware, we first have to recognize our triggers and things that provoke us or things that make us feel less than what we want to feel, identifying that, recognizing when we have a statement that is irrational, such as if you invited me to an event and you invited me to speak, and my first thought was, oh, you can't do that. You don't have value. You don't really have anything to talk about. You don't matter. You don't mean much, right, to the world. Why does anybody want to hear from you? Well, those are all irrational thoughts. So in order to recognize the thought, one still has to slow their whole world down and become living in the moment and in the present, right? So if I'm hearing that, I have to create a list of a rational thought process to counterbalance those negative thoughts. So if I were hearing I'm worthless or I have no value, I would then say to myself, no, you do have value, and I would list my accomplishments in my head. I would list all the ways that I knew I was capable in order to do such act that you're inviting me to do and that just takes place over a period of time of doing that with everything. I was living in a world paranoid and constantly living with self-doubt. So after practicing this from about the year 2008 to 2010, I've mastered and still continue to work on it because the old blueprint's still there. I still have to work on that every day. But through practice, it becomes easier. I gain more hope, and I'm able to model that same behavior with my children.
Well, how do you, I know we'll look at the future in just a little bit. How do you measure your success? How do you know that what you've done with these young women and is working?
So I think there's two answers to that. One answer would be, how do I measure the success within myself? How did I see that this curriculum would work? Because they're the pillars in my life, the foundational principles that I use. Was first by being able to keep track and being able to recognize in myself. So I start with a journal, a blessings or gratitude journal, that I, first of all, helped change my perspective on what am I thankful for each day, which then turned into me being able to say, what have I prayed for and what have I accomplished? So my journal became my booklet that I could refer back to say, these are the things that I've accomplished. So a big part of our programming goes into teaching them how to find their purpose, which teaches them then how to set what are their priorities, looking at those, and then how do they set their goals. And then we teach them how to achieve their goals, in a realistic manner. And that with each milestone, we need to take credit for that. So that's number one. Number two, we were extremely surprised and excited to see within our workshops right away, we had parents who had originally placed their child within our program, had said, most common things were my child's being bullied, my child can't stand up for herself or is not confident in how or what to say, my child has stopped talking within my home, meaning she's not going to her parent, those types of things. Within a couple of weeks, with our older girls who we started with first, ages 13 to 15, we found that the most common remark from a parent was, I'm so thankful my child is talking. My child is being more confident in her ability to communicate her needs. So we're really teaching children how to advocate for themselves if they're not in an environment that is not usually conducive, meaning a parent's either not leading them or demonstrating that, or the school and educational system is not an environment to where they're getting ahead in that manner. With our current girls, we're working with girls 8 to 11. Right away, we noticed that they were able to adapt rather quicker and to use them right away in a school setting. So we've had parents within a couple of weeks that came right back and said, my daughter was actually able to handle herself in this way on school with a peer that she had a conflict with. Her daughter was able to communicate to the other child, this is how I feel when this happens, therefore this is not acceptable. And so we're teaching children to redefine what an appropriate boundary is with their bully, with their friend, with their parent.
So I understand that this program is expanding. Do you have a schedule of workshops and any plans towards expansion? Absolutely.
We've been currently working at the Conejo Valley YMCA, and we've been serving girls roughly 8 to 16. We have also had the opportunity to have a volunteer and training program for peer role modeling. So we've been able to take our GIP graduates and place them in with the younger girls who now act as peer role models. And I do want to mention that each child is matched up with a mentor through the entire program. And we are really excited to announce we have 27 workshops that we're launching in the next 2 years, so for 2013 and 2014. We will be expanding from the Thousand Oaks area, being able to offer workshops most likely in Simi Valley, Westlake Village, potentially Malibu, the Valley, so maybe Woodland Hills or Reseda, Encino, and so forth. And so we're taking our program and expanding it to be able to serve more girls and launch nationally. So I believe our goal is about 350 girls in a one-on-one setting, because we only take 10 girls at a time. We take them through 10 weeks of programming, so 10 sessions that run for 3 hours. There's a graduation process, and they have their mentor process that takes place each week. And all the while we're doing self-checks and monitoring with weekly reflection reports.
And who is we? Because
yes, it's not just me.
Training 350. That's trying to add up the hours. That's a lot of hours. It's about 87 hours a day, so it shouldn't be a problem for someone with all your energy.
Right. Well, when I developed the program, I wouldn't have been able to do it with just myself. So one of my biggest prayer has been, bring me the people, and we will conquer this. And with one person, myself, we grew, I think when we launched in February at the Y, to one of 40 people. So we have been leveraging everything with everybody's time, free of charge. No one has been paid. So we have quite a large volunteer base, and we have a separate mentor base, and we have teachers that are always coming to us asking to teach classes. So there isn't, there's a need always. I don't want to mistake me for saying we don't need people. Mm-hmm. We always are looking for people to apply within and to apply from the outside to teach classes or be a mentor. Right now we use a lot of interns out of Cal Lutheran and Pepperdine University and Channel Islands and CSUN. So we're very fortunate. We have a huge internship program where we give interns the possibility of learning new skills as well. And how else are we doing that? Well, we're also creating a GIP certification, so a life coach certification. And when women come in and go through the certification process, they will then be able to be placed at chapter site locations within each city.
So how are you franchising this? I mean, there's all kinds of electronic media, and I have a cult of, I think, 4 people who follow me on Twitter, so
Whoa,
Yeah.
you might need some of our help.
No, that's all right if you've seen my Twitter. So
That's okay. Well, my background's in PR and marketing, and my partner, David Dom, has helped us develop ways and the ability to scale the project. So we're really excited that we are also working towards an online model. So not just will we be working with girls in person, but we will be launching that next year too, an online setting. So our GIP certified coaches will come on and teach that, and there'll be 30 students, which will most likely be paired with parents and daughters, mothers and daughters in that setting. And it'll be a teleseries. So they'll be provided the workshop materials online, and then there'll be a Q&A and a talk.
will there be any kind of Skype to kind of follow up? That's, I have a
Yes,
friend
we
who's
do
a vocal
hope
coach,
to incorporate a face-to-face interaction.
And then any Kindle, anything like that coming out?
Yes, thank you. I just finished the recording for my first Kindle, which is called Empower Your Girl, and that can be everyone can have access to that by going to www.empoweryourgirl.com. And I decided to write a book that was more centered towards our parents. We believe, after a lot of research and just being a single parent myself, raising 3 daughters, and knowing my parents weren't equipped to give me and fulfill me in the way that I needed, that our parents need the help. And so I thought I would share all of the tools that have helped make me successful with myself and my daughters, and for me to have a strong relationship with them and a good bond and open communication, that I would share that in this version. So we'll be launching the Kindle book in December on 12/12/12, and that'll be available.
Well, one of the people we've had on the show before was this fellow got off at Anacapa Island and swam to Port Hueneme and hadn't known how to swim 4 years before that at all. Wow. And it's a whole philanthropic entrepreneurialism. I mean, really, people, your venture capitalists, the people who are funding this are your students. And so what brought you to that philanthropic entrepreneurialism? How can you, I think that's really, you're leading the way there.
Absolutely, it's part of our mission is building a contributor to society. I believe that if we can reach a youth younger, and also that it's easier to train or teach and equip a child than it is to repair an adult. That if we start younger with modeling and teaching what love and respect, that inherent desire that we all have to feel love and to be heard, and teaching them young, that's how we reach them first. And I believe that as they go through our 3 levels, so we have an elementary level, a middle school level, and a high school level, that they'll be building these foundational principles that will serve them in all areas of their life, not just when they're in middle school, but later when they're working and they're in the career field and they're dealing with bosses and they're dealing with coworkers and all the strife that occurs, or they have a spouse and they're in a relationship. And rather than having to struggle through that and having to go through a divorce or having to want to hurt themselves, that they can adopt these principles that I'm sharing. And I mean, I'm in total experience that once I stepped out in 2010 and faced my fear and gave to other human beings selflessly, right? And that I had nothing no expectation in return, was I really able to experience what true giving back was all about. And that journey led me to develop the program. And obviously, since I've launched the program and I'm able to see how we're changing and impacting not just our girls, not just the little girls, but the women in our program, the women that are then learning from this and taking home what they're experiencing, what we're teaching them through them, it's happening on multiple levels. And so I believe that what we're here to do, what I'm here to do, is to have a revolution of a new way of thinking and of approaching humanity and people with love and respect and kindness and empathy and compassion first.
And then do you see this rolling out nationally?
Yes.
I see the local programs. So.
Yes, so December, our goal is to launch nationally and to make it more readily available to more, not just within our Conejo and like the Ventura counties and the LA counties. We'll continue to use that as our stepping stone, growing organically with the hopes of at minimum having around 4 workshop sites running weekly in every county. And as well, the online model will allow us to serve more girls as well. And we're developing iPhone apps to keep them connected and to keep them engaged and to keep teaching our tools through all the online methods.
So, and are you seeing any we have a very overweight America. Are you seeing any secondary effects, or sometimes we eat because we feel depressed, or we whatever in terms of exercise and nutrition and other health? Is that part of your curriculum as well?
Yes, it's the second. The second grouping of our programming. So we have arts, health and wellness, purpose, and community. And arts is built around self-expression and a platform that allows girls to connect with their inner passions and their inner strengths. Our health and wellness is around self-care, nutrition, appropriate boundaries with food, appropriate boundaries with exercise. So looking at healthy forms versus unhealthy forms. Purpose is getting them in touch with what is living with intention and purpose, and how do we give back to others, and how do we approach others. And then our community section is really about, this is where we invite guest teachers and guest leaders and spokespeople to come in and talk about their own passions and interests. And I do a thought-provoking, challenging question for the night that's tied into our theme for the day. And we sit around family-style dining. And we all break bread together, and we eat, and we incorporate that time into what we've just learned for that day.
America doesn't sit down and all eat together, so yes.
I do in my home.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Yeah, I mean, home economics back in way back when is you've got some basic skills that seem to have disappeared. Families sitting down,
Yes.
shopping for food, actually cooking it, and talking to each other.
It makes a huge difference in a home, and the amount of peace and clarity that you get from taking the time to do that. It is possible. I do it almost every night, creating a 10-minute meal that is lovely, that our kids can sit down, and that I can ask them about their high and their low, and I can, where we get to just kind of forget about everything and just be kids and just be moms and dads and just hanging out with them. It's one of the things that I've held on to the most that's like, this has to happen. So I obviously made it a part of the program, because I see where I get the most benefit from it in my own family.
And is the YMCA, is that just a place, or is that a supporting organization for you? Or
without the Y, we wouldn't be here today. So I'm so thankful that they were willing to partner with us in such a way that allowed us to leverage their space, who they are, right? They've been here a long time, and to allow our program to come in and use their building. So they've been supporting us through believing in our program, through allowing us to use the space free of charge, and which has allowed us to build more programs and develop a larger affiliate base, which is growing, and develop our sponsors. And so we couldn't do it without people like them.
And your sponsors might as well
I might as well give them a shout out. Thanks.
Give a shout out to
Marmalade Cafe in Calabasas, which is where I have primarily lived the last 20 years, has been a huge supporter from day one. And a lot of our teachers that are on staff have been a supporter since day one too. Corner Bakery in Thousand Oaks really came on for this latest series, and they're looking at potentially helping us on a long-term and a much larger scale. And Fresh and Easy came on this fall as well to help us with snacks and drinks. So along with printers and women in many businesses, from our CPAs to our attorneys to our financial planners to our insurance, everybody has given in some way or another to make it possible.
Well, I think maybe towards the end of the program we'll try and have a role of all these supporters, because they are important to this whole concept. That's really what we want to do here in Ventura, is really draw from our community, and you've done such an excellent job of really of pulling this all in, and it is, the 8 to 11-year-olds are they're very precious little creatures, and you're setting them off on the right path in their lives. I think. Now, some of it, you have some almost religious tenets in there. I mean, you look at AA, and it's pretty religious in terms of could be good old drunks around a table instead of God, but there are some basic things around religion. This seems to be non-denominational. Or did you find yourself pulling in from different faiths, principles? You have some Buddhism in there somewhere.
Yeah, it is definitely non-denominational. However, my desire to find my higher power, God, my belief and my faith is what has kept me alive and what I've drawn upon to live each day in having my quiet time and my conversations. I obviously am a recovering alcoholic, so I was in AA and I understand what those principles are, and really it's the same thing as releasing ourselves to a higher power. We inherently desire to be in control. And it isn't really until I know for myself that I realized I'm not in control of the world. I'm not in control of tomorrow. And I should not have regret about yesterday. So when I can live in the moment, which is what you're referring to about the Buddhist thought and theory, is that we live in the moment. And so it does carry, I think, a lot around those basic principles. But we believe that we're there to support every child and every person in whatever they seek that fulfills them.
Well, Melinda, so just if you could just kind of lay out here in the last minute or so. So the things that are coming up are the Kindle, and that'll be out in
12/12/12.
12/12/12. Good, numerologically, I'm sure. And then rolling out the other programs as you're heading down the valley. Is that in the first 3 months of the next year?
Yes. So we'll have 3 cities opened for January of 2012. So probably about the January 22nd week, we'll open up. But the registration process will open in December. Also, we're aiming for 12/12/12. We also filmed a commercial this summer called Silent No More. And so it's a big platform. I wrote the script and I had a vision about this, and it's allowing youth to stand up and have a voice and be able to say, this is how I'm feeling and this is what's going on in my world, and it's not okay. So we're really excited to let the world know that we have a demographic that is silently suffering, which is primarily how I felt my entire life.
What a great show. Just filled with energy and power. Ventura, it's time you get out there and you get moving.